Hi again, guys. Welcome back. I am going to be reading Boxcar Children on the Kindle, but first a joke. What time of year do people start using trampolines? In the springtime. Do you get it? Springs are what holds the bouncy part of the trampoline together, but also in the springtime. Okay, Housekeeping is the chapter we're on in Boxcar Children, and this is an old book, but it's a very good series. And I want to remind you what happened last time. So in the last chapter, they had found the dog. Jesse found the puppy, or the dog, and took the thorn out of his paw. And Henry went into town and got some milk and some bread and some cheese. So they had a good dinner with blueberries. And they all slept in the boxcar for that first night. And it was actually the first time in a couple of days that they've actually slept at night because they've been walking at night. So remember, the whole reason that they're running away is because they're afraid of their grandpa. And that's where the baker and the baker's wife were going to send them that next morning. So we're on the chapter called Housekeeping. The next morning, Jess was up before the others, as was fitting for a little housekeeper. That is, she was first if we accept the dog, who had opened one eye instantly every time his little mistress stirred in her sleep. He sat watching gravely in the door of the car as Jess descended to get breakfast. She walked from the little waterfall quite a distance down the brook, looking at it with critical eyes. "This will be the well," she said to herself, regarding a small but deep and quiet basin just below the falls. Below that she found a larger basin lined with gravel, with flat stones surrounding it. "This will be the wash tub," she decided, "and now I must go back to the refrigerator." So they don't really have a refrigerator, remember, so let's find out what she means. This was the strangest spot of all, for behind the little waterfall was a small, quiet pool in which Jess had set the milk bottles the night before. Not a drop of water could get in, but all night long the cool running water had surrounded the bottles. They were now fairly icy to the touch. Jess smiled as she drew them out. It's pretty clever. She found a place behind the waterfall. "Is it good?" asked Benny's voice. There he sat in the door of the car, swinging his legs, his arms around the shaggy dog. "It's delicious," declared Jess, "cold as ice." She climbed up beside him as she spoke, bringing the breakfast with her. The other two children sat up and looked at it. "Today, Jess," began Henry, "I will go back to town and try to get a job mowing lawns or something. Then we can afford to have something besides milk for breakfast." Milk suited Benny very well, however, so the older children allowed him to drink rather more than his share. Henry did not waste any time talking. He brushed his hair as well as he could without a brush, rolled down his sleeves, and started for town with the second dollar. "You've got a dog, Jess," he called back as he waved his straw hat. "Or glad you've got a dog, Jess." The children watched him disappear around the curve and then turned to Jess expectantly. They were not mistaken. Jess had a plan. "We'll explore," she began mysteriously. "We'll begin here at the car and hunt all over these woods until we find a dump." "What's a dump?" inquired Benny. "Oh, Benny," answered Violet, "you know what a dump is. All old bottles and papers and broken dishes." "And wheels?" asked Benny interestedly. "Will there be any old wheels?" "Yes, maybe," assented Violet. "But cups, Benny. Think of drinking milk out of a cup again." "Oh, yes," said Benny politely, but it was clear that his mind was centered on wheels rather than cups. The exploring party slowly started down the rusty track with the dog hopping happily on three legs, the fourth paw nicely bandaged with Jess's handkerchief he held up out of harm's way. "I think this is a spur track," said Jess. "They built it in here so they could load wood on the cars, and then when they had cut all the wood, they didn't need the track anymore." This explanation seemed very likely, for here and there were stumps of trees and decaying chips. Violet took note of these chips and remembered them some days later. In fact, both girls kept their eyes open and pointed out things of interest to each other. "Remember these logs, Violet, if we should ever need any," said Jess, pointing. "Blackberry blossoms," returned Violet briefly, turning one over gently with her foot. "Big flat stones," remarked Jess later on, as they came upon a great heap of them. So now what they're doing is they're walking to the junkyard, and they are looking and noticing things as they're going that they might be able to use later. Here the track, and they're walking along the track, the railroad track, because a boxcar had to have been on a railroad track, right? Because it comes from a train. Here the track came out into the open sunshine, and broken pieces of rail showed clearly where it had joined the main track at some time in the past. So that means it's no longer a working railroad track, and that's good because no trains can come, right? And here, from the top of the wooded hill, the children could plainly see the city in the valley. They walked along the track, picking out a church steeple here and there, forgetting for a moment the object of their search. "There's a wheel!" Benny cried triumphantly from behind. The girls looked down, and with a glad cry of surprise, Jess recognized a dump at the foot of the hill. They found it not composed entirely of ashes and tin cans, either, although both of these were there in great profusion. It was a royal dump, containing both cups and wheels. "Oh, Benny!" cried Jess. "If it hadn't been for you," she hugged him, wheel and all, and began turning around the rubbish with great delight. "Here's a white pitcher, Jess," Violet called, holding up a perfect specimen with a tiny chip in its nose. "Here's a big white cup," said Jess delightedly, laying it aside. "Want a teapot, Jessie?" inquired Benny, offering her an enormous blue enameled affair without a handle. "Yes, indeed," cried Jess. "We can use that for water. I found 2 cups and a bowl already, and Violet, we ought to be looking for spoons too." Violet pointed without speaking to her little pile of treasures. There were 5 iron spoons covered with rust. "Wonderful," pronounced Jess with rapture. Indeed, it is doubtful if collectors of rare and beautiful bits of porcelain ever enjoyed a search as much as did these adventurers in the dump heap. Benny actually found 4 wheels exactly alike, probably from the same cart, and insisted upon carrying them back. To please him, Jess allowed him to add them to the growing pile. "Here's a big iron kettle," observed Violet, "but we won't really cook with a fire, will we, Jess?" "We'll take it back, though," replied Jess with a knowing look. "We can pile lots of dishes in it." They could and did, but not until after Benny had discovered his beloved pink cup. It was a tea party cup of bright rose color with a wreath of gorgeous roses on it, and a little shepherdess giving her lamb a drink from a pale blue brook. It had a perfectly good handle, gold into the bargain. Its only flaw was a dangerous crack through the lamb's nose and front feet. Jess made a cushion for it out of grass and laid it on top of the kettle full of treasures. All the things, even the wheels, were laid on a wide board which the 2 girls carried between them. So what a treasure! Okay, so the next chapter is called Benny Discovered His Beloved Pink Cup, but I thought you might be interested in the picture, so I don't know if you can see. So imagine all the things that they find in a dump that they need. So they found spoons. I wonder how they're going to clean those spoons though, because it did say they have rust. And porcelain dishes, cups, and even some wheels for Benny to have fun with. So sounds like they have a plan, and they have a refrigerator behind that little waterfall brook. All right, guys, tune in tomorrow and we will read Benny Discovered His Pink Cup.